Well, hello YouTube, this is RL coming to you again from my channel, and welcome back to another episode of Retro Life Reviews, where we review video games from the 1980s and 90s. And once again, here is my good friend and co-host, CK.
Hello everybody.
So we review everything in a like, love, and loathe scale with graphics, music, sound effects, gameplay, controls, difficulty, fun factor, replay value, and story if applicable. So we're going to be reviewing the classic game for the Master System, Sonic the Hedgehog, the first one. You know, it's a game that I didn't even know was on the Master System.
It's funny enough, the story on how it got there is interesting, but we'll get into that. This iconic little blue hedgehog is, I guess, the current and running mascot of the SEGA brand. A little history on Sonic the Hedgehog. It was actually created back in, I think, 1990-91, when SEGA was ultimately looking for a mascot to rival Mario, their rival company, Nintendo. And a couple of ideas had come through, and they eventually settled on a hedgehog, of all things, which you think is interesting. Sonic the Hedgehog is a platform game developed by the Sonic team and published for SEGA back in 91. It was actually released in the 16-bit version Genesis, then rebuilt for the Game Gear when they were launching the Game Gear, as well as just ported to the Master System in a way so that those that are still playing on the older system get to play the mascot version of the game.
So we're going to start with graphics first. So what do you think of the graphics in this game, CK?
The graphics in this game are better than some of the earlier games that were released on the console. And I think the same thing falls for the Nintendo in that way, that games kind of later on in the console's life were just visually better. What I do like about the graphics in this game is it's very colorful. First things first, as soon as you see the game, you instantly are blown away by just the use of colors, the use of depth, and the way they run kind of parallax scrolling in the game. It really adds to the depth and to the detail of the game. You know, you have backdrops where you're either in an industrial zone or like in Green Hill Zone, where you can see the waterfalls and the mountains in the back, you know, in the range of the gameplay. While you speed through these levels, you still can visually see and enjoy, you know, take in the atmosphere. So graphics on the console, especially for the 8-bit version, wasn't that far off from the 16-bit version, and it's still respectable in its own way. And for that, I give it a retro double like.
Oh, nice. Yes, graphics are not terrible. I mean, the Master System is a very powerful system. A lot of people know that it was a lot more powerful than the NES. The graphics look a lot better in many games that come out. Not bashing the NES. I love the NES. It was the first system I had. But the Master System was a powerful system for its time. It looks really great. I mean, it don't lose too much of the detail that they have in the Genesis. Obviously, the Genesis one is far superior and just has a better flow. But the graphics are pretty sharp, and there's a lot of detail, a lot of colors. And I don't have a lot of experience with the Master System version of this game, but it is definitely, when you play it, the graphics look really polished and detailed, which is really impressive. Can't say that for a lot of games in that era, you know, in terms of detail and, you know, the polygon count. I feel this is pretty high, and so I'm gonna give it a retro love for graphics.
Okay.
Yeah,
nice.
Right off the bat, a retro love. Alright, so let's move on to music. What did you think of the music in Sonic the Hedgehog, CK?
Music for Sonic, regardless of what console you listen to it on, it is a must-have experience. Everything about it is great. We touched on music and atmosphere and mood back when we reviewed Donkey Kong Country. And I'd have to say that for this console, well before this, you know, before Donkey Kong even existed, Sonic the Hedgehog had that same motif, that same feel. Levels were built, and the music drove the experience of the level. It's the atmosphere that truly puts you in the mood to play, and it makes the same gameplay feel different. I enjoyed the music. I enjoy every level. I have a friend who listens to Sonic music on the reg, and he has it like on his MP3 player and on his phone, and he'll listen to it in his car. Like it's that level of enjoyment. And I can say that I've been the same way. I play it in the background when I'm designing or working on a project or whatever, and it's just great music. Even some of the levels that aren't necessarily high energy do have an atmosphere to them, and it's worth listening to. Great composition, well put together, and because of the sound chip being superior on that console, it just worked well. And I think Sega's always had great music in their games, and for that, I give it a retro double love.
Oh, nice. A double love. You really love the music.
I really do.
love
Oh, yeah.
that music. It is catchy, isn't it? So, music for me, yeah, I'm going to pretty much say a lot what you're saying, but I'll just put my spin on it. Yeah, the music is very catchy. Sonic music has always been really good. I enjoy it very much. This one was no different than the Sega Genesis ones that I played. Sonic 2 is my jam back in the day. That was the game that first introduced me to Sonic, so the music was very similar. There were some different tracks and some original tracks I never heard for a Sonic game, but they were all very catchy. There was very few tunes that I felt that I didn't want to listen to.
Right.
I remember there's one tune for Sonic 2 that I didn't like at all, and I had to mute it, but that's the only time that I've ever said to myself, I think it's the level where it's like industrial level where you have all these oil rigs and stuff, like oil.
Yeah.
Never liked that music. But anyways, that's not this game. The music is fun. It's upbeat. You can't complain about the music for Sonic.
No.
It's different than Mario, but it's definitely on par. Not as iconic, I would think, but still very catchy and very memorable, and you want to listen to it, and it's fun. Makes the game fun. So for music, I'm going to be consistent so far, and I'm going to give it a retro love for music.
Very cool.
Yeah, alright. So let's move on now. Moving on to sound effects. What did you think of the sound effects in this game?
The sound effects, I think the sound effects are enjoyable. They are very cartoony. They are very definitive. When you get hit, when you have no rings, and you get spiked or you get shot, doo-doom, those sounds without the melody, just those sound bites really work to help tell you exactly what's going on in the game. Would I say speeding up of the track, which would I tie it into sound effects or tie it into music? I guess it's tied into music really, but it's an effect of the music. When time is running down and you've got the music playing faster, when you're getting hit, the sound of the rings has always been one of those things that just stick with you. And it doesn't matter like what game and what generation. If you've ever played Sonic or have ever heard or watched anyone play Sonic, you know that sound when you get hit and those rings splay, you know exactly what that sound is. And it's not a sound you want to hear often, but they really do define the game. And they are sound effects that when you hear them instantly remind you of exactly what you're playing and you know exactly what's happening. So for them serving the purpose for more than just, I guess, being sounds in the game, they really worked for this. And they stand alone in the franchise, and they've been used throughout the franchise, which I enjoy as well. So for that, I give it a retro love.
Wow, this is a very consistent review for us. Alright, so sound effects for me. I keep on repeating myself every time. Every review it sounds the same. I think I should just dub in my response for every single one for sound effects. I don't think there's much. I wouldn't say generic. It's definitely not generic. It's fun. The sound effects are fun. When Sonic gets spikes and you have that ping or whatever.
Yep, that pong sound. Yeah,
the bubbling noises and stuff. Maybe
That's
I'm thinking of Genesis. I'm not sure. I haven't played enough of this game. I played a little. There's some things that are very distinctive in the Sonic universe of sound effects, and they work. They're not recreating the wheel for sound effects, but they're not generic. They're not basic. They're what you expect for a platforming game, similar to Mario with just with a hedgehog, right? And they get the job done, and it's nothing overly amazing, but it's not terrible. It's in the middle ground. So because it's in that middle ground, and sound effects don't always excite me, and I don't really pay attention as much, I'm just gonna give it a retro-like for sound. It's not a negative. It's not that I think it's terrible. I just don't feel love for sound effects as much as other categories, So
Understood.
I think it's fair. I'm gonna give it a like. So alright, so it's a like and you're a love. So moving on to the gameplay. What'd you think of the gameplay in Sonic the Hedgehog, CK?
When I first played Sonic, funny enough, it actually was the Master System version. I didn't know anyone with a Genesis, and my cousin had a Master System. So my first experience was this 8-bit version of Sonic. And I always thought that 99% of the games that ended up on Genesis were, that were on the Master System were just ported up. I never knew that it was ported back. The gameplay really worked, and I enjoyed the one for the Master System. And then playing Sonic 2 and then stuff later on the Genesis, I realized that the game is so much faster on the Genesis.
Yes.
It's just so much faster, and so it's just exciting. And I think with regards to them building a game around the concept of speed and quick thinking and quick reactions, it makes it technically difficult in a way, because you've got to build it so that there's enough fluidity for a player to react, and even if they react slowly, the game still kind of guides that flow without there being, a wall or a barrier or a jump that you keep failing every single time. So there's a lot of loops. There's a lot of ramps. There's a lot of ramps. When you're stationary and you need to get up to a certain level, they have the springboards to bounce up, the bridges that kind of, they drop under the weight of the character as the character goes over the bridge. Like, there's so many elements that make this game so enjoyable to play. The variety of level designs, as simple as it is, where you're just a character speeding through, collecting rings and trying not to get hit, it really works. It's implemented in so many ways that it becomes one of those experiences that is completely different from Mario, completely different from any other game that you would have played, literally, at that time, unless it was a racing game, and even then, side-scroll racing game didn't exist. So, gameplay, for me, is a retro double love. There is no question. It's a fantastic game to play.
Oh my god, another double love. That's 2 double loves in this review, CK. Alright, awesome. I don't think I have a double love in a long time. I should check the notes. I should check the backlog and see when my last double love was, but I think it's Mario. I think it was the Mario game. It's been so long.
It might have been.
I don't even remember giving double loves anymore. It's been so long. Alright, gameplay for me. Not that this is a competition, but I'm just envious of the double loves. I love the double loves. Alright, so gameplay for me, it's Sonic gameplay, pretty similar to the games that I played on the Sega Genesis. And the point you made that I was going to make, and I was thinking, oh my god, you took my point, was the speed level. The levels are it's just not as fast as on the Genesis. It feels a little sluggish compared to a normal Sonic game. So that threw me off a little bit. And obviously there was no spin dash. That one I think was introduced in Sonic 2, I believe. And so even the original Sonic on the Sega Genesis, it doesn't even have the spin dash. So
there's no spin dash. You can roll, but there's no
you can roll, but I find the spin dash is a huge improvement and makes the gameplay so much easier and better because of that. You have more control over the speed of the character, and so for the lack of that, it definitely suffers in the gameplay department because of that. So I'm not going to give it as high as you, but the gameplay is, it's fun gameplay. It's enjoyable. Sonic's always fun, although I didn't really play much Sonic after Sonic 2, but we're talking about the Master System. But this is ironically, they ported it the other way. I don't know how many other games have been ported the other way. It's so fun.
That would be interesting to find out.
That's an interesting little tidbit of information there. And so gameplay for me is enjoyable. I'm going to give it a double like, not a double love, a double like for gameplay for me.
Totally fair.
Try to be fair. So moving on to controls. What do you think of the controls in this game, CK?
The controls work. Again, for a game that's based on speed and reaction, it works. I'll kind of parry back to what I said about it being a little slower, and we've both commented on this, and I think anyone who's played both versions can clearly see it was built to be a little slower. One, due to the processor, and I think two, maybe because, even if they made the game a little bit slower on that console, there'd be more people inclined to play it and not instantly get frustrated with the speed type of thing. So, the jumping of the character, again, without the spin dash and stuff, things that we didn't know existed until you had that feature back in Sonic 2 days. It's simple. It truly is simple. You run left, you run right, you jump, and you roll. So it's very simple, and it's not as sharp or not as tight as Mario is. I can say that for a fact, because as you're moving your character, Sonic has a bit of a glide, like in his step as he kind of moves and he stops. He doesn't stop per se precisely on a pixel. He doesn't have that pixel stop. And this game doesn't require you to have that. So therefore, the controls just work well for the type of game it is. So it's hard to kind of give it a rating if I'm saying it needs to be tight to get a high score, if it's too loosey-goosey to get a low score. It's right for the type of game you play. And because of that, and wanting to be fair, I give it a retro double like.
Cool. Yeah, so controls for me, the controls, I always like to say tight or, very solid, not loosey-goosey, as you say. This game doesn't really need to have that. There's not that much big jumping in this game, in the sense like Mario, where you need to have that pinpoint accuracy. But it still feels responsive. It doesn't feel loosey-goosey either. The game is more simplistic, and it's more, sliding and going down like tunnels and loops, to get that speed burst, because you don't have the speed dash, exactly. Yep. So I wouldn't say there's no platforming. Obviously there's a platforming game, but it's not like anything like Mario where you need to have precise controls. But even so, the controls are very good, and they're very responsive, and they're enjoyable. And playing this game, I felt no frustration, and that's always a good sign when there's controls. You're not frustrated. So
definitely.
So how I'm going to gauge it is going to be this time on how frustrating it was for me. And since the frustration level was very low, the score is going to be very high. So I'm going to give it a retro love for controls.
Hey, look at that. Nice.
Yeah, that's how I'm basing it, this one. It's not about the pinpoint. It's just a good controlled game. So moving on to difficulty. What did you think of the difficulty in this game?
The difficulty? It's scaling. I think for a lot of platforming games, it really comes down to, if they've built it right, it just works. And with this game, it feels as though they kind of gave you more environmental hazards than really increased hazards, you know what I mean? Like for ramping up the difficulty in a way over the game. In certain games, especially side-scrolling games, where they add different types of bosses or different types of characters or different types of pitfalls, per se, that make the game harder as you get further, speeding up things and adding more bullet storm. Those are easy ways to ramp up difficulty. In this one, you don't get that as much. And I think because it really relies on reaction time. The game requires you to be a little more reactive and a little more decisive as you get further in the game. But ultimately, outside of that, it's not like it's incredibly difficult. Also, the game isn't incredibly long. Like, it's not a very long game. I think there are something like 6 or 7 levels, if I remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So, the levels are long enough to play, but they're not incredibly difficult to beat. It just takes some time and precision, and the difficulty comes with learning when and where to jump. So you do replay a lot to get to that level. You do, trial and error to get better at it. So the difficulty not being rampable immensely, it gets a retro like for me.
Yeah. All right. So difficulty for me, yeah, it's not a difficult game. I don't have a lot of experience with it, but with the experience I've had and the levels that I played, it was pretty straightforward, very basic, and maybe basic's a bad word, but it's very straightforward and very, it's not too complicated. None of Sonic games are very complicated or very deep. They're very simplistic in a way, although it sounds negative. It's not. It's just a very simple game, and it's about speed, not so much on the Master System. Sega Genesis was more about the speed. That's when they really started to amp up the speed. But of course, this is backwards compatible. This is a game that's been reverse retroed, consoled. So they had limitations and they couldn't do everything they could do on the Sega Genesis. But the difficulty is right. It feels right. It's not crazy difficult, obviously, and it's not to the point where it's really so simple or so easy that you feel it should be for a preschooler. So because of that, I'm going to give it a retro double like for difficulty.
All right.
So moving on to fun factor. What'd you think of the fun factor in this game, CK?
The game is fun if you don't mind the speed and the frustration of dying based on things that you can't see on the level, or you just, your brain and your hands just can't catch up. And I know for my cousins playing the game when I was growing up, that was the reason why they didn't like the game as much, because I just can't react fast enough, or I just keep dying here. I'm like, well, then you learn the next time you go through, because your baddies are going to be in the same place, more or less all the time. They are literally kind of, I guess, call them like zone baddies. They frequent a certain area and a very small pixelated area over and over again. So unless you know, you don't know, and then when you die there, then you know. So it's one of those, it's not fun because I can't play the game. I just don't have fun because it's hard for me. but it really wasn't hard for me. It was enjoyable, and I think the ease of the difficulty made it a very fun game to play because you can get through it fairly easy. And the variety of levels, the music, the simplicity of game, the controls, like everything about it just made it enjoyable for me. And again, this is our subjective reviews because it is our reviews. Yep. So for me, it's definitely a fun game, and I'll just get right to my scoring, and I will give it a retro love.
Yeah, no, that's fair. All right, so fun factor for me. This is going to be a tough one to score for me because I don't have as much experience with this game, and I was always, when I'm playing this game, I'm thinking I want to be playing Sonic 2. So that's going to take away some of the fun for me, I'm going to say, because if you're thinking about the other Sonic games, you say, I'd rather be playing Sonic 2, you're not going to really think this game is as fun as Sonic 2.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to find a fair balance there, but the game, is a Sonic game, so that alone makes it fun and enjoyable, but there's no speed dash, so that's not as much fun. So there's a lot of variance going on in my mind. I don't want to bash it. All my scores have been on the high end, not the low end.
Favorable side, definitely.
But the fun factor, I'm going to have to say, isn't as fun as I would want it to be for a Sonic game. And that's not a knock on it. It's just that there was other Sonic games, as I said, that were better than this particular game. And of course, you know that this is a game that's been scaled down for a system that really wasn't able to handle what it could offer on the other system, the Sega Genesis. So because of that, it's not going to be as fun for me. So I'm just going to get right to it. I've been beating around the bush with this. But the fun for me, I'm going to give it, and this might be a little controversial, I'm just going to give it a like for fun.
Oh, okay. That's a lot more favorable than I thought. I thought you were going to go half-like because I figured it okay.
No.
Okay.
That makes no sense. No sense, but it's just not as fun as the experiences. And I think I'm just biased because I played Sonic 2, and that was my favorite Sonic game of all time. All right, well, moving on. There's no story, so we're going to go right to replay value. What did you think of the replay value in this game, CK?
I see the replay value as being better than half. If you enjoy speedruns, but you also enjoy platform adventuring, like being able to actually go through the level and look through different things, I find that I did a little more exploring in the level in this version of the game, and because of that, it allows you to just play every level a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. And because of that, you can play the game in slightly different ways, even though it's a very simple mechanic and don't get hit. So for that, I give it a retro double like.
Fair. Yeah, so replay value for me, there's replay value because it's Sonic. So Sonic always going to have replay value for me. I'm going to enjoy it, and I like the idea. And what you said, the idea of being more explorative in this game than the other Sonic games, which is true, because if it's a slower experience and you're not going as fast, you're going to be more likely to pay attention to what's going on and what's there instead of just luring your way through the game, the level.
That's right.
Which is pretty much what Sonic was on the Sega Genesis. It was a big blue blur, at times, and that's why I've always liked in my more mature years, I'm 85, I'm so mature. Basically, always feel like Sonic isn't as popular for me as Mario is, because there's more stuff to explore in Mario. You can still go fast, but Sonic is just like, get there as fast as you can and just speed through this level design, which I don't always enjoy as much because I like substance. But I'm not hating on Sonic. I think it's an awesome character and it's an awesome game. So there is replay value. Back to the replay value. I think there's a lot of replay value in this for sure, and I'm gonna score it accordingly to how I feel, and I'm gonna give it a double like you did.
Hey,
yeah,
double like.
Double like, which means it's a love. So we're both giving it a love. No,
there you go.
It's a double like. All right, so this is the portion of review where we tabulate the influence scores. So what did you give influence for this game, CK?
Influence for Sonic is high, not just for the franchise alone, but literally everything else that came out after him, especially for the Sega console. So, Sonic the Hedgehog Master System gets an influence score of 2.
Ooh, the highest score.
The highest.
Well, I'm not going to be as kind as you are. We're reviewing the actual game itself, not the actual character, because for the Master System, I don't know if the Master System version has influenced, but Sonic itself has influence. So because of that, I'm going to do half of it. So I'm going to give it a 1 for influence.
Understood.
Alright, so this is the portion of review where we flip a coin, and whoever wins the flip gets to choose the next 2 games for you guys to vote on. So I'm going to flip now. So I'm flipping the coin, and it's a heads. So heads is high and you win, CK.
Awesome.
I think this is rigged towards CK. If we do a tabulation of all the flips, I think you've won 90% of the flips.
Well, maybe 75.
Alright, I'm just teasing. So you won the flip, CK. So what are the 2 games you choose for the audience to vote on?
For the SNES, I am choosing F-Zero, the classic racing game, and Valis 3 for the Sega Genesis.
Both great games, and we never reviewed a racing game, so that would be pretty cool to review one, because I know you're a big racing fan. So
I am.
So, different choices than just beat 'em ups. We're doing a lot of beat 'em ups.
We have been. Beat 'em ups and platformers are kind of the staple, but I mean, for those consoles back then, that's been the staple, right?
Yes,
for a lot of
exactly.
the retro consoles.
And a lot of there's platformers for sure. All right, so it was a fun review on Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yes, it was.
Thanks for doing it again with me, as always.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me again.
Alright, so on that note, we will have more Retro Life content in the weeks, months, and years to come. Bye for now.
Ciao, folks.
Another installment of Retro Life Reviews, where we review video games from the 1980s and 90s. I'm going to dub that, so who cares?